left. You never left, we know, but you're listening to Smooth Breakfast with me, Valentine. And it's time for us to go into detailed analysis of the newspaper stories this morning. And to do justice to these stories, to actually analyze it in a wonderful way for a Feel Good Friday, we have Nwaji in the studio with us. Good morning, Nwaji.
Good morning, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos.
Good to see you, Nwaji. And of course, we have Tunde Okufi, Big Cuffs on Twitter. Good morning. Good morning. You can find Nwaji on Twitter at the Corporate MC with a K. Corporate with a K. All right. So the Corporate MC, Lagos. To be part of the show and send in your contributions, comments, and observations, please send it to WhatsApp 0809-444-0981. That's not all. On YouTube, you can leave a comment there as well. But first, hit the subscribe button so you get an alert anytime we come on air. But type in the search box to find us, type Smooth 981 FM Lagos. And also on Twitter, we're at Smooth 981 FM. Use that hashtag freshly pressed 981. Our first story is coming from Vanguard newspaper. Why Nigerian government cannot release Dasuki. Nwaji, in this story, in the details, the federal government said they've given reasons why they believe that the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, should not be granted bail. They said the Attorney General of the Federation who said this, Mr. Abubakar Malami, SAN, said that Mr. Dasuki's personal rights can be violated for the larger public good. They said he's responsible, he should be held responsible for over 100,000 people who lost their lives. What are your thoughts on this story?
I mean, this is actually very interesting. And when you put things into context, it's always good. That's the beauty of history. You can use that to guide a lot of precedents and whatnot. Yes, I can appreciate the defense of Colonel Dasuki with regards to his individual rights not being violated. He should be granted bail until we get to trial, and then we can now, at that point, determine whether or not he's guilty. But the conversation now becomes that your rights can be denied given the actions that you took affected the lives of other people. So there's precedence where you now begin to look at what happened with Albania and Serbia in the 1990s, and also what happened in Rwanda in the 1990s, where individual actions caused the deaths of thousands of people. So when those situations now went to tribunals in The Hague and tribunals in Arusha, it now became a case of your acts, your your instigations, the words that you use, the way that you manipulated individuals, the way that you manipulated the media, et cetera, now caused the death tolls to be as high as they are. So as a result of that, you can be denied some basic rights normally attributed towards you if you were more or less acting in the capacity of an individual citizen. So I understand the perspective of the Attorney General and why they're going to keep holding him until they can now get to the point of understanding further what happened and to put forth the reasons to now go to trial. So it does make a lot of sense. I understand it. Not necessarily trying to give my personal opinion, but the logic behind it is pretty sound.
But Nwaji, is not easy to forget. I mean, Nigerians would easily react this way, and when they hear the story this morning, the first thoughts will come up would be Nigerian government flouted the ECOWAS release orders and the 15 million naira penalties that was awarded in favor of Colonel Sambo Dasuki at the time. And then this is the sixth time that it might seem, if they go forward to say, actually, we're not going to grant him bail, the Nigerian government keeps him down in detention. It'll be the sixth time that they're flouting court orders. Is this a good precedent to keep pushing forward?
It's tricky, and that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not, so that's why I'm not sitting here trying to offer opinions as to whether or not it's right or wrong. I do understand the logic behind the Attorney General's perspective. So to your point that you're making, which I completely understand, that's where it now becomes tricky, because the argument, like as rightfully said by the Attorney General when you go into this article, is that, reports have shown that there was massive mismanagement of funds meant for military hardware, which the military could not access, and that led to the death of many, embezzlement of the fund, and because of that, many people have lost their lives. So with regards to the conversation that you're making, you can now go to the families of those who have now perished and said, okay, well, if I can connect the fact that we could not be protected due to mismanagement of the funds that this person had access to, then where's my recompense?
And then in that sense, wouldn't it make sense today, now that you want to weigh in, wouldn't it make sense to actually now bring in all the other culprits that were named in these allegations? I mean, based on the investigation that's been going on.
He was the head dog in charge, man.
So because he was central to this, that's why the focus is on him. But my perspective is a little while I totally agree with everything you said, Raji, and I agree, or I see the point about the greater good. The truth is that this story and this occurrence highlights the fact that in Nigeria, the rule of law and or the constitution is not supreme. You know, we don't have supremacy.
It's federal government. It's federal government, and
people dispense. The federal government dispenses justice as they seem deemed, and we're supposed to have a delineation and separation of rules. Now, what a civilized country would do, and is to change the law. When the US and the UK had to start detaining people for lengthy periods of time just
because of terrorism,
just because they were public threats, they went back and changed the laws. They did not hold people. Where there's no law, there's no crime, right? And you have to do things within the remit and the boundaries of the law, right?
Yeah, because he can come back and sue.
He can come back and sue, right? Yeah, he can come back and sue. In all this back and forth, all these gist, the Attorney General should know better.
Yeah.
They should change the law, or make provisions, legal provisions that now make it legal, that they're within a legal and proper.
So let me play let me play devil's advocate towards that though. Is there provision within the law to suspend individual rights if cases like this do come up?
Not to the best of my knowledge. If it was, they would have argued that. They would have argued that. They're just saying we're holding him.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
The same way they're holding our brother in the East.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That one is a Houdini case. I mean, no one knows where that dude is.
Just vanished, man.
Let's move on to this next story. We'll jump straight to Vanguard newspaper, and we'll come right back to another story that affects Lagos State government. So Vanguard newspaper has this headline: Police deny assassination attempt on Dino Melaye, asks him to report. Tunde, the Kogi State Police Command has denied reports that Senator Dino Melaye, representing Kogi West District at National Assembly, they said that he mentioned that unknown gunmen fired several shots, about 20 shots, riddled his car with the bullets and everything. He actually tweeted about this, in a convoy on his Jeep. But the police, in replying him, said these are baseless allegations, that he's misinforming the public and citing instances where he's actually put the lives of the security personnel in danger. What are your thoughts?
Oh, so comedy is good for the bones. Let's keep that in mind. Yes, and Dino is an interesting guy because he makes, at least for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, he makes you experience the full range of emotions from just pure, provided to anger and then often disgust at what you see him do. You experience the full thing, but you then also can't deny the fact that it gives you a good laugh, and with everything else that we suffer.
You think he and Fayose had a meeting regarding what theatrics we're going to put in place?
The plot.
Who's going to outact who?
I'm telling you honestly. And when you watch him, it's straight out of his playbook. It's straight out of he was a student union leader, and it's classic diversion. The man he's a case. But now if he's in this practice, focusing on this story, if he believes that there's a threat on his life, he should make, as the police have told him, that he should make a formal report, not go to Twitter. Right? So now Dino says on Thursday, unknown gunmen in uniform, police, SARS, and military. That seems very odd. It's almost like the kind of thing you see out of a vision, like you're sleeping and you have this feeling that people are coming for you. But he doesn't stop there in his tweet. He says that his car was riddled with over 20 bullet holes. Again, this is
still
evidence. Alive. Let's say it's possible. He had miraculous escape, but this is evidence, right? That can be investigated.
There's ballistics and all these,
all of that stuff, all the things that we're not trained to, investigate. But anyway,
guys, a little faith.
There's a car riddled with bullet holes, right? Should be investigated.
Yes.
The man has made a claim, but it shouldn't be left. He shouldn't use his position, his public position, to make allegations, on social media or just in the press. He has a duty to report to the authorities.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be conducted. But then again, Dino never does anything as it should be done, which is, it's an entire reflection on our society and our politics.
Here's a little worry that I've now that we see that some of our lawmakers actually just make I wouldn't say baseless until proven otherwise, but if they make some of these allegations, and upon investigation, perhaps we get to see results where some of these allegations are proven to be wrong. Are there implications, or are they immune to any sort of?
Well, that's the Tunde's point. No,
they're not.
That's the point.
It's the position they enjoy in society. Yeah. That's what it is.
Nothing happens.
Oh boy.
It's a position, so they're free and they're allowed to do
and
it.
You can just say whatever you want.
And honest, it's a very long story, but if you go into the detail, then you see that perhaps, okay, so bottom line, that there was some sort of skirmish between his convoy and a police patrol outpost that was on regular patrol.
Yes.
And the police side is that they were driving and behaving recklessly. It didn't state that there were any guns or anything fired, but in this man's world, in Dino's world, everyone's out to get him.
Thank you very much, Tunde and Nwaji, for that. Now, coming back to newspaper, Lagos State government insists on zero tolerance for begging. So in this story, actually, I was very glad when I saw this headline in one of the papers. Now, Lagos State government said that the policy on zero tolerance for begging in the state is still in force, and added that the spate of street begging is worrisome. And in a very interesting statement, the Commissioner for Youth and Social Development, Abola Dabiri, said that, I'll take this. There's no available statistics actually indicating the level of, I would say, proliferation of these beggars in Lagos State. But the administrative judge of Lagos State High Court, Justice Kazim Alogba, said that there was a need to amend the law that's already existing that prohibited street begging, whereby both the givers and beggars, as well as the suspected godfathers, because we all know it's a cabal in existence in some cases, would be made to face the penalty of the law if caught. My question to you, Waji, is the government seems, well, let me not say the government, but we hear that there's a law already in place. What are the law enforcement agents doing? Because it seems as if they are just folding their hands and watching it, remain as status quo.
They're waiting for their guy at the top to tell them to enforce the law. I mean, I don't know how else you want me to answer that question. It's literally that simple. Because if the laws are there and the law enforcement agency, it's not like this is just some invincible criminal syndicate. This thing happens every single day in all parts of Lagos and pockets of it at best. When you're on the Lekki Expressway going down towards Oxapa and VGC, when you get to those traffic lights, they just literally swarm your cars in different parts of Ikoyi, Victoria Island, all parts of Lagos. You see them.
And sometimes it's very threatening.
It's very threatening when they just besiege your car, little children. And then there's the environmental impact as well. There's the human impact as well, which also has to do with the possibility of some of these kids getting hit by cars because of the way that they run on the streets.
Right.
They're unprotected, they're unsupervised. These things do happen. So I like the idea of fining the givers as well. I think that's a positive step in the approach. No. Let me tell you why I like the idea, because it's discouraging. It's not best practice, but I understand the concept of. So that way, if people can begin to feel that I'm not going to give those beggars for it, those beggars don't feel they have those opportunities or those, outposts to begin to now get money from. So they maybe will move to another area. So maybe that's a particular strategy you can put in place to somewhat bring it down. Does it address the overall problem? No. Because you need to figure out, number one, why are these individuals on the streets?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's number one that we need to figure out. How, number two, once we figure out why on the streets, how do we get them off the streets? Because, I mean, for God's sake, we live in Lagos. We know them. We see their parents on the side. These guys don't get sick. They eat food every day. I remember one time my brother and I were driving, and he was saying to me, now, why did you know that the food they're eating looks better than what you and I had this morning? You understand? And if you see them eating fruits, vegetables, and I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I haven't had lunch.
And we recently heard a story about a man that was saying, well dressed and stepping into the bank at 8 a.m. Making payments, and the bank tellers recognized that he was one of the guys
who was making deposits. There you go. So we need to have a larger conversation as to how do we now gauge the economic understanding of this whole thing and begin to now figure out how to disperse them from the roads and just figure and get more creative with enforcing that law.
All right, thank you very much. You're going to answer something
very, very quickly.
Okay.
They need to get them off the roads. They need to look for alternatives. If they can't beg, then
they move into crime. Standard.
That's it. Yeah. Now we have a message from on WhatsApp from Priye from Apapa. It says, freshly pressed 91. Good morning, Val. One question to the federal government on the Dasuki case is that what if in the long run, after going through all these trials, Supreme Court finds Dasuki innocent? Will they still keep him in custody? I guess not.
No, they won't. He will get out and he's sue and he's gonna make it rain. That's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen.
And then Big E from Kitu says, Dino and Bello are just made for Nollywood. I wonder why they're wasting their talent in government. They are disappointments for the not young to wrong deal. A reckless senator, a reckless governor, a reckless system. #Ekukogi.
Fantastic point. Fantastic
Henry sent in this one. Should respect for valid court orders be contextual? No. Are the charges preferred against Dasuki bailable? Yes. And that's why more than one court has granted him bail. The only thing I understand in the confused arguments is the Attorney General in that respect for court orders should be optional, I guess. Anyway, Moving on now to the next story from Punch newspaper. 2019 polls. Police, the civil defense demand 317 million naira to feed dogs and horses. Tunde.
You got
I don't know, nothing else to say, man. Just,
wow.
They also added somewhere that they need about a million, million staff.
Who let the dogs out?
So election time, offering time.
Offering time.
Okay, so look, what does this? Until now, I had no idea how integral our canine friends were to our electoral process.
They're very integral.
I had no idea. I thought it was only the stray dogs or bingos that we see about that were involved in some way.
Come on, don't say that.
So
I have a Rottweiler and a German Shepherd.
And
I know how smart
is
they
he
are.
going to police the polls?
And he was on
electoral duty.
the last time around, yeah?
No, they weren't.
Okay. So, hey, you better list them up. There's 310.
You do, because you could get a piece of that pie.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm sure your dogs are outside. These are, dogs that belong to the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. Let's hope the actual dogs are not virtual dogs.
Tunde, shade, dog,
shade. Who knows? Then it's 310 million. It's
217 million.
Yeah, when you add the 7 million for the horses,
Mm-hmm.
and the 7 million for 50 horses.
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't mention how many dogs.
Yeah.
I would have thought that it's more. I know that it's more expensive to feed horses and dogs, so I really wonder how many dogs. I've never seen dogs used anywhere in on our elections, so this is amazing. I don't want to call it padding. Let me say I just don't know. Right. It makes you when you see these amounts, it makes you wonder how much money is voted for the men and women of the police force when we know the state that things are in and the states and the unconducive conditions under which they have to work.
Yeah.
Equipment, and not even just their remuneration. And look at what we're pouring towards things. Are they necessary and essential? To conduct a proper election? It's a reflection on how our entire system. Our elections are too expensive as it is, right? The way, but it's the path we've gone. The federal system is expensive. But it's the route we've chosen. I don't see how we'll turn around. It's very difficult when you read. And there are all sorts of things. The money is voted for all sorts of expenses on the day. It makes it very hard to justify and understand and to look at it in any other context than election and preparing for an election watches.
There's also a place where they mentioned the immigration's demand for 126 million naira for name tags.
You see, guys, Tony, this is to your point. He says it's a reflection of who we are, because the mere fact that you can actually just go into the press and demand these things openly, in your mind, what you're basically telling Nigeria is that you guys are dumb as doornails.
I'm telling you,
and that's pretty much what you're telling the nation, is that if you guys can't discern that we are literally just taking money and stashing it away, then I don't know. Then frankly, and you guys are going to do nothing about it. Then we're going to continue doing it. Tomorrow we're going to come out and maybe release another 100 million for Eagles. After all, fly Eagles fly.
Yeah.
Well, to substitute drones.
Yeah.
You see, Val, you see, there you go.
I didn't say that. I'm just asking.
I'm just saying.
Lagos, if you're watching us on YouTube live, you see a wonderful gentleman analyzing the news. You also see FIA for short, who's joining us to observe. In the meantime, Olatunde on YouTube, Olatunde Olao said, "I disagree with the stance of the Attorney General of the Federation to the non-release of bail of Dasuki. He's charged with corruption and not murder or crimes against humanity."
No, but it's linked to murder because
the antecedent effects
exactly.
Of
so you
actions,
can't.
yes.
That's what I'm saying. There's precedence for this. You had this in the Balkans. You had this in Rwanda, and it's very important to pay attention to history. These individuals were not necessarily responsible for the deaths that happened, but they were critical, integral, instigating factors behind it, and that was what they used. But like Tunde's point said, they changed the law to say that you could be tried for crimes against humanity if you were a propagator of those crimes. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying precedence is key. So so that's why we cannot remove the lasting effect of these actions.
That's right.
Okay, so let's just pay attention to the facts.
That's right. Vlad Impela on Twitter says, this federal government cannot release Dasuki when the courts on 5 different rulings have ordered his release. The irony is the CNC, a few days back, was talking about human rights at the ICC. Zaki still held without charge, while Kanu is MIA.
Okay, so that's you see, that validates the point I'm making. Yeah.
Steve Obiako here still says, you guys in the studio also giving Dino Melaye this much needed publicity. You actually ignore his comic antics and make him pay for publicity. All right, that's a good suggestion, I guess.
Yes, lucky he's not running for president. That was Trump.
We don't really
that was
care
Trump.
about that.
Trump,
free
$200 million worth of free adverts. Yeah.
All right, so Steve Obiako says, you want to ban beggars? I remember reading a book titled The Beggar Strike. Begging is a huge business in most African countries. Solving the root cause, poverty and ignorance, is better. Moving on now, Ortom, the Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom, has recanted his earlier declaration that he made last week, suggesting that he has left the All Progressives Congress. He said he was still a member of the APC. He was impressed with the intervention of the national leadership of the party.
So what happened to what he said earlier?
He said, probably just raised dust, threatened a little bit, and then got the attention of the national leadership, I guess. He's changed his mind.
And bottom line, that's what will happen from now till the election starts. And expect to see a lot more of this. People posturing, people, throwing tantrums because they're angling for more, or just trying to say, look, I'm still relevant. Don't forget,
But do we have to be partisan to actually? It seems as if some of the aspirants or politicians are losing focus. Nigeria needs to get to a point where we need to appreciate the fact that it's actually your ideology that matters more than your party affiliations.
Not in Nigeria.
Oh, well.
Unfortunately, no.
I guess I'm just dreaming now.
No, there's only one ideology, one overarching ideology for these guys, which is why they can cross carpet at the rate at which they do, and it's the policy of me, myself, and my pockets.
Thank you very much, Tunde. So we have a message here from ZZ Classics on WhatsApp. It said 317 million naira to feed dogs, horses. Chineke, in bracket shocked. How much have I been given since I've been on queue for this election?
Are you a dog? Are you a horse?
Mrs. A said, I gave my last cash to a beggar on the streets because she said her sister was hospitalized, and I walked home only to find out that the beggar was buying suya with the money I gave her.
There you go.
I was at a shopping mall 2 weeks ago, and a lady with an infant on her back came to me, looked very sober and everything, and asked me to give her money for drugs. I thought about it for a second, and I said, go to the medicine store. It's very close. It was very close to where we are.
Collect what you want.
Collect what you want, get the invoice, and I'll pay. I didn't see her again.
Of course.
Moving on now, we'll see this story, Gridlock, talking about Gridlock in Lagos. Punch newspaper reports, do not close third mainland bridge. Lagos State government counsels. Nwaji, Lagos State government on Thursday urged the federal government to postpone its planned closure of the third mainland bridge in the state, adding that the move would compound the usual gridlock caused by activities of tanker drivers in Apapa.
My only response to this is that wasn't the whole point or the whole narrative of Lagos State belonging to the same political party as the federal government to speak to the point of us having the seamlessness of connection and conversation. So my issue is, where was the consultations back and forth across this wonderful synergy that we're supposed to have before this decision was made? Case in point, if you close Third Mainland Bridge, with the situation happening on Ikorodu Road, everybody should just stay home. Just stay home. Just work remotely, make sure your internet is working, and that's it. And maybe it'll be better for us. We'll spend more time with our families.
Maybe improve productivity.
All those things will work, because there's just no way that you're going to divert that traffic without another alternative, unless you're going to ask people to go through Ikorodu, Ekpe, they're not coming to Lagos. It's just not going to make any sense. And the fact that consultation was not had with the Lagos State Traffic Management System is an actual problem. So I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know what systems they're going to put in place. I don't know if they're going to temporarily suspend. I think it's going to be about 4 days that they're closing the Third Mainland Bridge or thereabouts.
No,
the repairs are going to take 27 months.
27 months,
the initial shutdown period is going to be like 4 days. So I think for that period, what are you going to do regarding getting those trucks off that Ikorodu access to Jora and to Lagos Island? Because if you don't do that, everybody's just forget it.
Especially now that it seems that a lot more tankers and trailers are coming into the town because we have the port only in Lagos.
Exactly.
And it highlights a busy need for other means of transport. I don't. Anyway, let's just calm down for a second. We have a message from Dami here on WhatsApp. It says, give me 10% of that money. I'll back better than those dogs. Let's take for some more stories. Now, Tunde, I'll come to you with this one from Vanguard newspaper. Federal Accounts Allocation Committee says that 10 billion naira was paid in excess to states while sharing bailout funds in 2016, according to the annual report. What's your take on this one?
So the FAAC is getting a lot of focus now, whether it's from a shortfall in remittance from oil and gas or taxes and all of that. I think it's all coming down to the fact that there is probably not enough money to go around. Okay, but now here he says that when Boo Boo approved for for the state's bailout for the state's bailout in 2015, that they were meant to pay back over a period of time, it emerges that they were overpaid by 10 billion. And I wonder, it's taking 2 years for us to find out. Are there no annual reports? And then do we not conduct an annual audit? What's the Auditor General and the Office of the Auditor General then doing? Isn't that supposed to be best practice?
As the states who are owing salaries, are they not part of the beneficiaries of this fund?
No, they are the beneficiaries. No, that's a question. No, we need to find out, because here's what it says. Whereas, after everything being submitted, and they posited that what was near 406 billion. Whereas audit scrutiny of the documents presented revealed that the actual total principal amount released to the benefiting states was a sum of 416, right? So the question is this a case of omission or commission? More often than not in Nigeria, it is one of commission. Right? Someone has layered, it's expensive to, transfer and make payments. So,
and even write it on paper.
And everything. So all of these things have happened. But again, we shouldn't treat this the way we treat everything else in the nation. And unfortunately, I'm not confident that it won't be either swept under the rug. Nobody will be brought to, nobody be held accountable for this. No one will pay for this. This is 10 billion, stolen from, our Commonwealth.
Yeah.
We already need, the reason why the bailout was given is because the states couldn't pay salaries, and a few people apparently are able to sit down and just chop this money.
Yeah.
So the question is, was it chopped at the center, or the individual states that were overpaid just kept quiet? Which we need to know.
We'll follow the story closely to give you details as they unfold. Jason's dad on Twitter has said Dasuki has been granted bail by a competent court of law. It is a basic principle of law that one cannot be a judge in his own case. How can the AGF, who's the accuser here, still determine the offense is not bailable? And then Pumping says 317 million naira for police dogs, and will the money make them smart dogs so as to sniff and attack those that are involved in vote buying and ballot snatching?
Cyber dogs, we don't know yet.
You never know. Jim says Auditor is Trump's brother. 1 minute he's partyless, the next he's denying making the current crops of politicians. No iota of truth in them. Wow, thank you very much. Moving on now to the final story. Workers issue 21-day ultimatum to federal government over Apapa Oshodi expressway gridlock. That's from the Vanguard newspaper. Would you please flesh it out for us?
The ultimatums, the ultimate. These things always happen. There's one union, there's one group, there's one government, there's one agency that's always giving these guys a 7-day ultimatum, a 10-day ultimatum, a 21-day ultimatum. Nothing's going to happen, all right? Until there is a concerted federal and state level organization regarding getting these individuals off that gridlock path. This thing has been going on for too long. I experienced it personally every day for a very long time because I used to live in Apapa. So I know exactly what goes on. I know the conversations. I know the individuals and the lobbyists behind the people who own the trucks, the calls that they make to the governments to suspend whatever ultimatums and further decisions. The only person that actually came close to actually consistently getting off the road because of his own personal perspective on it was Fashola when he was in government. All fairness to him, and he could care less. Ambode has tried, but these things are very difficult because when you now begin to look at the institutions that own these trucks and you count the numbers that are going to the port, and these guys are huge lobbyists that contributed towards your campaign. Come on now. Let's just be honest with ourselves. So I understand the sentiments behind it. People are suffering. Businesses are shutting down. It is a calamity beyond anything that we can comprehend when you now begin to look at the numbers that are being forced. So let's just stop with the ultimatums and let's begin to figure out and scale back on how we can actually, in a deliberate and concise manner, tackle this gridlock problem.
All right. Thank you very much, Nwaji and Tunde. You can find them up on Twitter at Big Cuffs, with just one F, Big Cuffs. That's Tunde. Big Cuffs, all right. And then the corporate MC with a K. Very unique names. All right, guys. Quickly take this last message before we go. Rainmaker here says, good morning, guys. Samuel Ortom just wants attention. He seems to be mature for governance. He never quit the APC because herdsmen killed his kinsman. He did not do that to draw federal presence in form of infrastructure into a state. The man needs deliverance. I think our election spending will continue to be on the increase. One of our population is one is our population. Two, as infrastructures come structures, dilapidating every day. Three, new crimes everywhere. Four, politicians getting smarter. On the other side, why can't we invest 30% of the security monies in tech? Things to consider. Lagos coming up next at 8:15. We'll talk about sports inside of the locker room. Special thanks to you, gentlemen, for a Feel Good Friday. Lagos, keep it here. It's Smooth 98.1. Good morning.
The headlines. The stories.
Nigeria, we hail thee.
Yeah. Well done. Special case, man. We need it every day.
On Smooth 98.1.
All right, so wrap.
And next week is going to be interesting.
Yes, it will. Thank you.
Because they're closing it from Sunday, right?